Happy Friday to all of you. Thanks for joining us as always. It is very much appreciated. We're going to try to stay away from the drama, the soap opera, the leaks. We're going to try to stay away from all of that today. I mean, it's a Friday, right? We want to enjoy the weekend, some easy listening today with some fun stuff and some thoughts about a possible coaching search and the draft, past, present, future, all of those things, but try to stay away from the drama. That is the goal of this show today. Hopefully, you will enjoy it. Lots of research into this puppy. Some names of possible replacements at head coach, not named Jerod Mayo. If Belichick is gone, we'll get into that. We'll also have an astounding look at Belichick's recent draft performance. If you think it's been bad, it might be worse than you think. We'll get into that, as well as a Pro Football Focus mock draft. PFF released their 5-round Patriots mock draft for 2024 this week. We'll go over that. But before we dive into those things, I want to remind you, rate and review. Spotify, Apple Pods means an awful lot to the program. And we're trying to build this alternative, right? If you're tired of watching and listening to the same old stuff and you have found us to be an alternative, help us out. Help us build this community. You can do it in 3 ways. Hopefully do all 3. Give us a thumbs up on this YouTube video. Comment on the video as well. And don't forget to subscribe. All right, let's get into this coaching search if Belichick goes. Now, we've had popular names. Jim Harbaugh has been thrown out there. Jerod Mayo has been thrown out there an awful lot. We'll get into Mayo on another day. And then a lot of people are clamoring for a young offensive mind, a young offensive coach. Tom Pelissero, NFL.com, wrote about some of the hot names that will be likely available when the season ends. The next wave of contestants, so to speak. Let's handle the veterans first, because I don't think the veteran list is sexy at all. 10 of the 14 names that Pelissero gives us are from the defensive side. If you're going to have a head coach from the defensive side of the football, I'd imagine the top 2 candidates would be Jerod Mayo and Mike Vrabel. We've covered Vrabel. We're going to cover Mayo at a later date, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But I don't think you're going to go defensive unless it's one of those 2 guys. Eric Bieniemy is mentioned in this column. Bieniemy has been a hot name for 7, 8 years. And I have to question. I have to question where Bieniemy is when you think of the actual list of guys who are serious contenders for any team, given his history of interviews. Bieniemy has interviewed for a bunch of head coaching jobs, and he has never really gotten too close. There's a reason for that. There could be multiple reasons for that. The interview history would lead you to believe that Bieniemy has not been great in front of decision makers when it comes to a plan, a vision, philosophy, whatever. He's had a bunch of opportunities to interview, and he has never landed the plane. So that's a question I have. As an offensive coordinator, he's done a good job in Washington. He's done a good job with Sam Howell in Kansas City. He obviously had Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Don't really know how intricately involved he was with that offensive process, but the success in Kansas City speaks for itself. So on the field and what we've seen, Bieniemy would seem to be a pretty good candidate to be a head coach. But again, why have the interviews yet to land him a job? And some of the questions that have been thrown out there within league circles about Bieniemy, those to me are the things that we can't really answer because we're not in those rooms. But we have to remain cognizant that there have been some questions, and he has interviewed a lot and has yet to land that job for some reason. Jim Harbaugh, David Shaw, 2 names brought up. I don't think either of those 2 names scream to me offensive evolution. Shaw ended up cratering at Stanford. Harbaugh's offense with Michigan is pretty antiquated. So I don't think I look at those 2 guys and say, that's the juice. If we want to really pump this offense, and if your idea is to bring in an offensive mind that will provide that boost to this program and to bring this offense into 2024 and beyond, I don't necessarily see Harbaugh or Shaw as the guy to implement that kind of offense. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, with San Francisco, you could look back with Colin Kaepernick and what Harbaugh did with Kaepernick and got the most out of him, got to a Super Bowl. You can look back at that and say, hey, maybe he could get creative. I look at that and say that was likely out of necessity because who he had at quarterback. If you look at what he wants to do as an offense at Michigan, run the football a lot, play it safe with the quarterback, that to me is not, ooh, wow, look at that ingenuity. Okay. So I don't know if those names scream evolution. Todd Monken is another name that was brought up in this story by Pelissero. Monken is doing a really good job in Baltimore this year as the offensive coordinator. But the last time he was a head coach, college football, his record was 13-26. So thanks, but no thanks on Monken. All right, so let's get to the youth movement. Pelissero wrote about the youth movement, the young offensive minds, right? Pelissero wrote, in the 6 cycles since the Rams hired McVay in 2017, almost half of all head coaching hires league-wide, 20 of 42, which is 47.6%, have come from the same demographic, under age 45 with no previous NFL head coaching experience. Under age 45 with no previous NFL head coaching experience. So when you look at those names that fit that demographic, let's first go through the young names of the offensive guys, because I'm going to limit the length of this list. It's a very long list that Pelissero provided. Let's look at the names that I am not super excited about, okay? The young offensive minds that I would have some serious questions about becoming the next head coach of the New England Patriots if Bill Belichick walks. Panthers offensive coordinator Thomas Brown. He's 37. I would ask, what has he done in Carolina? This is his first big gig, and he had the play calling duties stripped from him this past week. He was given those play calling duties just a couple of weeks ago. He didn't solve really any of the problems in Carolina. So now Frank Reich is taking the play calling back from him. He's totally unproven as a top guy, even as far as OC, right? That's what we're looking at. Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan, he's 39. Well, Zach Taylor is an offensive-minded head coach. He is also the play caller in Cincinnati, and you wonder how much has Callahan been helped by Joe Burrow and those weapons that they have. So I'm not super sold on him. Bears offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, 39. I mean, if you have anyone that you bring in that has had a hand in the Justin Fields mess and mishandling, I'm staying away. Giants offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, who's 36. He's had one decent season. That was with Daniel Jones. We can't overlook Brian Daboll being the head coach. And this year, they've been a disaster with Jones and without Jones. Cardinals offensive coordinator Drew Petzing, 36. He's had less than 1 year as a coordinator, and it's been okay. Dolphins offensive coordinator Frank Smith, 42. Again, Mike McDaniel calls the plays. Mike McDaniel is kind of seen as that genius. And Frank Smith is a brandy new offensive coordinator. Don't know if I want to hand the gig to him. Jaguars offensive coordinator Press Taylor's 35. The Jags offense has been very disappointing this year, and Trevor Lawrence has actually declined from last season. So I'm staying away from him. So here are my top 5 names on this list. The top 5 names that I see as credible, could be exciting replacements for Bill Belichick if he walks. A name that has been brought up numerous times. Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. I think this would be the guy. If you're looking for an offensive coach, somebody who has the reputation, that has had a good resume over the past couple of years, it is Ben Johnson. 37. He's done a great job with Jared Goff. He is very creative. When we talk about evolved offense, I just mentioned the Harbaugh and Shaw stuff and whether or not they would really truly represent evolution on the offensive side of the ball. Ben Johnson represents evolution on the offensive side of the ball. He's number 1 on my list if you're looking at a young offensive mind who has yet to be a head coach. The second guy on my list, Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. Now, I know this is his first year as a play caller, and some other guys on the previous list got dinged for that. But here's what I would say about Slowick. Slowick had a heavy influence in game planning for Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. He played a vital role within that program much like Mike McDaniel did before McDaniel left for Miami. So Slowick, he was involved in that offense at a pretty high level. He is also known to have a very high football IQ. And you look at what he's done in Houston this year as the OC for DeMeco Ryans with C.J. Stroud, rookie quarterback, right? Young weapons, an offensive line that's been dinged up, a running game that hasn't always been there. And Slowick has had a very good year, and C.J. Stroud in his rookie season is being discussed as a possibility for league MVP if Houston continues to win. Bobby Slowick is second on my list. Third on my list, Chargers offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. Now, is he a leader of men? I don't know, but he's 35 years old. He's played. He really took that Dallas offense from a vanilla offense going back years ago and sped up the process, and he evolved that offense. He got creative. He changed things. He had lots of motion pre-snap. He did a lot of different looks. So he really turned Dallas's offense into one of the best offenses in football when he became the OC there. Mike McCarthy got rid of him because Mike McCarthy needed a scapegoat and because Mike McCarthy is an offensive guy and he wanted to call the plays. But Kellen Moore did a damn good job in Dallas. He's done a really good job in LA. They have a top 10 offense with the Chargers this year. So I think Kellen Moore is a name that we have to have on the list. Eagles offensive coordinator Brian Johnson. He's 36. He's another guy. Interestingly enough, Johnson was the youngest FBS coach, or FBS offensive coordinator, at 24 years old. The youngest OC in the history of FBS college football at the age of 24. He's worked with Dak Prescott. He's worked with Jalen Hurts. If you're looking at the newer aged quarterbacks, guys that can beat you with RPOs, can run with the football, different play designs off of that, you can look at Brian Johnson with the Eagles as somebody who has intricate knowledge of working with quarterbacks that have those skills. He interests me. Finally, Seahawks offensive coordinator Shane Waldron. A little bit older. He's 44 years old, but he has coached under Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, and Sean McVay. That's a pretty good list. He is one of the main reasons Geno Smith has had his revival, his NFL rebirth out there in Seattle. Waldron is one of the main reasons why. So those would be the top 5 names for me as far as young offensive minds in the game. Ben Johnson from the Lions, offensive coordinator. Bobby Slowick, offensive coordinator for the Texans. Kellen Moore with the Chargers, OC. Brian Johnson, OC of the Eagles. And Shane Waldron, the Seahawks, offensive coordinator. All right, earlier this week, we talked about the 2022 NFL Draft. We had some comments in the channel that every GM has some misses. Well, the problems with Patriots drafts and Bill Belichick go well beyond the 2022 draft. We're going to dive deep into that in a minute. But don't forget, rate and review Apple Pods and Spotify and on YouTube. How can you help build this community, help build this show, get us out there as an alternative? 3 ways on YouTube. You can give us that thumbs up. Takes a second of your time, takes a second of your Friday, takes a second of your weekend. Give us that thumbs up. You can comment as well. Some of your names that you would like to see mentioned as somebody who could replace Bill Belichick if Belichick goes. And don't forget to subscribe. Trying to get to 1,250 subscriptions by the end of the weekend. We are a decent amount behind. Let's make a push. Let's subscribe to the channel. All right, let's look at Belichick's recent drafting record. And hopefully you have a strong stomach. Let's first, though, before we get into Belichick's drafts over the last 7-8 years, I want to underline some realities, okay? I want to handle some people's objections up front. I said a couple of weeks ago on the pod that I worked for sales. Cutco Cutlery, baby. Actually, where I met my wife, Kelly. I worked in sales when I was young, when I was in college. And one of the first things they tell you in sales is that you have to handle objections. You have to handle the objection. You have to put everything on the table up front and say, this is true, but this is the response and this is the reality, right? So here's what we'll look at. Number 1, no GM is perfect. We know that. Number 2, there have been good GMs throughout NFL history that have had some bad stretches. Number 3, the draft is absolutely 100% unequivocally an inexact science. We all have to understand that there will be misses. There will be bad drafts. There will be bad trades. Those things happen. Today, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Belichick needs to be flawless. He needed to be perfect. I'm not going to say any of that. I'm also very aware that Belichick has had good drafts. He has drafted several great players, including a guy by the name of Tom Brady. I know that. But since 2015, the NFL draft has been a dumpster fire for Bill Belichick and his staff. And Bill Barnwell wrote about this at ESPN.com. And man, oh man, what an awful track record from 2015 to 2022. And obviously, you don't look at 2023 because we have no idea what these guys are going to become. Christian Gonzalez looks like an absolute stud. I'm excited about Keon White. Obviously, Pop Douglas looks fun and looks like he can be a pivotal player for this team moving forward. But we're in the middle of their rookie season. So we look at 2015 to 2022. You ready for this? First round picks. Let's look at some first round picks here. And Barnwell went very, very in-depth with his breakdown. Some excerpts. First round picks since 2015, from 2015 to 2022. Malcolm Brown, Isaiah Wynn, Sony Michel, N'Keal Harry, Mac Jones, Cole Strange. Barnwell writes, at best, the Patriots drafted one guy who might land a meaningful second deal from this group, and it's Strange, who doesn't play a high-value position and is 25 years old. Let's get to the second round. Between 2015 and 2022, Patriots second-round picks. Jordan Richards, Cyrus Jones, Duke Dawson, Joanne Williams, Kyle Duggar, Josh Uche, Christian Barmore, and Tyquan Thornton. Richards, Cyrus Jones, Dawson, and Williams started a total of 9 games for the Patriots. Woof. And if the draft record isn't bad enough, let's look at the trades that Belichick has made in the second round. He moved up to draft Duke Dawson. Major swing and a miss. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers stayed put, and they picked Carlton Davis, who was eons better than Dawson. They also moved down in a deal with the Panthers. Carolina landed a valuable offensive tackle and Taylor Moton. And then who can forget the Mohamed Sanu trade? Brutal. Now, if you think that's bad enough first and second round, get ready to get physically sick. Let's look at the third round and think about these freaking names I'm going to give you. Think about this roll call of football desert. Edge, Geno Grissom. Guard, Joe Thuney. Ding. There's a hit. Big hit. Quarterback, Jacoby Brissett. Defensive tackle, Vincent Valentine. How many of you actually remember Vincent Valentine? I don't. Edge, Derek Rivers. Offensive tackle, Antonio Garcia. He had a medical condition, so that is what it is. Edge, Chase Winovich, now out of football. Running back, Damian Harris. Offensive lineman, Yanni Kajust. Anthony Jennings, okay, still on the team. Devin Asiasi, Dalton Keene, Ronnie Perkins, and Marcus Jones. Barnwell writes that Thuney was a dream selection. He's also the one and only hit out of all of those names I just gave you. Guys that stayed with the team for their second contracts, guys that went out there in the offseason after their rookie scale deal and got market value contracts. One hit out of that entire list, and it was Joe Thuney. Barnwell writes, Marcus Jones excelled as a punt returner, jack of all trades. Obviously, he's missed most of this year with a torn labrum. Barnwell writes, even if you want to count Marcus Jones as a potential hit, the Patriots have hit on 2 of 14 draft picks in the third round between 2015 and 2022. That sucks. You can't put lipstick on that pig. That is a big old fat pig. 2 out of 14. Barnwell writes, I'd argue overall there were 2 hits. So let's put this in perspective. There is a list of 28 draft picks, first, second, third rounds, between 2015 and 2022. And the argument is that 2 of those 28 players in the top 3 rounds were hits. Barnwell mentions Kyle Duggar and the obvious Tooney. 2 out of 28 picks in the first 3 rounds over a span of 8 drafts. This is not a case of we're going to miss sometimes. Barnwell writes, you could argue Strange, Barmore, and Marcus Jones are works in progress. Fair. So the best possible outcome, if Strange hits, if Barmore hits, if Marcus Jones hits, the best possible outcome is hitting on 5 of the 28 draft picks between 2015 and 2022, rounds 1 through 3. I did the math. That is a 17.8% hit rate out of the first 3 rounds the last 8 years. Less than 18% of the time when Bill Belichick has drafted in the first 3 rounds over the last 8 years, he's hit on a player. Less than 18% of the time. Barnwell writes, in that 8-year span, the Patriots did not land a single star on the upper end of the positional spectrum. Some other takeaways from that work by Bill Barnwell. Number 1, Brady saved your Tookus for the first 4 years out of those 8 years, right? He saved you. We would have been talking about even more how bad these drafts were and how bad this football team was if Tom Brady wasn't helping save it from 2015 through 2019. So we first have to underline that. The other thing is this myth that Bill Belichick only has issues evaluating offensive players. That's not true. 15 of the 28 picks that we mentioned, 15 of the 28 picks were on the defensive side of the ball. Belichick had the same probability of hitting on the defense as he did on the offense as the GM of the New England Patriots, drafting from 2015 to 2022. So it's no longer just offensive evaluation. First round through the third round, 2015 to 2022, Belichick also swung and missed massively on the defensive side of the ball. They sucked at drafting for 8 years. Period. End of sentence. Belichick, being the head coach, gave him some leverage and allowed him to save himself as a GM. There's no doubt in my mind, because nobody else would have survived this long, that kind of track record, unless it was a guy who won 6 Super Bowls and went to countless AFC championship games as a head coach. GM Bill Belichick should have been let go a long time ago. When you look at this resume, it stinks out loud. It's a full 8 years of suctitude. It's actually pretty difficult to accomplish. You fail at the draft, you need an all-time great quarterback to have a shot at consistently contending. They had that great quarterback. They had that all-time great from 15 to 19 during these terrible draft years. Then they drafted a quarterback that was average to slightly above average at best, with limited physical skills and traits and all that stuff, as we've talked about. Mac Jones is not the quarterback that's going to be able to help you survive that kind of drafting atrociousness. It's just not. Not many guys are. It's not to defend Mac. It's to highlight how bad this team and how bad Belichick has been drafting for 7 or 8 years. Speaking of the draft, PFF put out a 5-round mock draft for the Patriots coming up in April. We'll have some fun with that. But let's remind you all, rate and review Apple Pods and Spotify. Also, if you want to help us grow the community, if you want to become part of this family, come on in. We got beverages in the back. The pool is warm. Make sure that you give us that thumbs up on YouTube, comment, and subscribe. All right, quickly. Patriots 2-8 in November. So justifiably, we're talking about coaches that could replace Belichick, and we're talking about the draft, talking about names, talking about strategy. And Pro Football Focus, Trevor Sikma wrote this week about a 5-round Patriots mock draft. Current spot, pick 3, round 1, Marvin Harrison Jr. Sikma writes, Patriots need offensive line help. You can look at some names there, but positional importance aside, Harrison Jr. would likely be the consensus number 1 player on big boards for this draft cycle. So Marvin Harrison Jr. with pick number 3. Pick number 2 in the second round, 35 overall. Quarterback Jaden Daniels from LSU. Sikma writes, Daniels is putting on a show in 2023. He has recorded an elite 94.6 overall grade with a 91.2 passing grade and a 92.0 rushing grade. Daniels, according to PFF system, is second to only Drake May in big-time throws with 27, yet he still has a low turnover-worthy play percentage at 2.4% after he did a very good job of taking care of the football in 2022. So Marvin Harrison Jr., pick number 1. In round 1, should be pick number 3. Round 1. Jaden Daniels, pick number 35, round 2. Third round pick, 67 overall. Offensive tackle, Kingsley Suamete from BYU. I probably absolutely butchered that name. Let's try Sumataya. I like that better. Sumataya is a former 5-star offensive lineman, moves very well despite his 6'6", 320-pound frame. He could end up going higher than pick 67. Round 4 pick is cornerback Nehemiah Pritchett from Auburn. In the 5th round pick 140, running back Will Shipley from Clemson. So you got Harrison, Daniels. That name kills me. Sumataya, Pritchett, and Shipley. Pro Football Focus's Patriots 5-round mock draft. Some takeaways. There's no generational quarterback at number 3 as far as what you read and what we've heard. I've watched some of these guys play. I'm not breaking down film. I can't tell you that this guy is a bona fide, no doubt about it, surefire franchise quarterback. I like Caleb Williams. I think he has special traits. I think Drake May has some special traits. There are questions, especially about Williams, his height, his size, right? Some of the emotional stuff people bring up. But there's no generational quarterback, no surefire guy from the experts' opinions beyond the top 2. And of course, experts have been wrong before, right? We've seen it before. So it's again, inexact science. Harrison Jr. could be a planet player. I'm all for picking that guy at 3. If you don't get a quarterback, if you don't feel like there is a generational quarterback at 3, picking Harrison, who could be a planet player, could be a top 5 to 10 wide receiver in his rookie season at the NFL level. He's a complete prospect. I'm good with that. Picking a quarterback at 35, I would ask, why not slide up to the end of the 1st round to get that extra year on the rookie scaled contract? We see teams do that all of the time. If the Patriots are going to draft a quarterback at the top of the 2nd round, I would say give up an asset to move up to the end of the 1st round to gain that extra year on the contract. It gives you more security at that position. And Daniels is fun. I've watched him a number of times at LSU. He's very fun. He's an intriguing prospect, super athleticism, and again, makes some big-time throws. So he's fun. Now, if this plan goes accordingly, if you draft Daniels at the top of the 2nd round or late 1st round, I still think you have to sign an established quarterback veteran to compete for the job. You just don't hand the keys over to somebody from the top of the 2nd round. You also, I think, would have to sign an offensive tackle if you're waiting until round 3 to address that position. And if you're not going to play Michael Onwenu at right tackle, if you sign Onwenu, if he's not going to play right tackle, you have to go out and sign 2 offensive tackles while drafting somebody. I don't necessarily see the need for a cornerback in round 4 Next year, you have Jonathan Jones, Christian Gonzalez, Marcus Jones coming back from injury, Miles Bryant. I know he's polarizing, but as a 4th or 5th cornerback, he's fine. I love the Shipley pick in the 5th round because he's a receiving running back, a versatile running back. He can run the football. He can run outside the tackles, inside the tackles. You can line him up at other places like the slot. So there's a lot of things you could do with Shipley, and he's precisely the running back we've talked about that the Patriots have missed on 3rd downs in recent years. He's that guy. So there you go. Some coaching talk, some draft talk. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. Hope you have a great weekend. Don't forget, rate, review Apple Pods and Spotify, like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Aside from some big breaking news, we'll be back on Monday. Till then, it's the Nick Cattle Show.